Welcome to Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up in the next half hour. Nigeria has comfortably raised $1 billion in its return to the Eurobond market, signaling high investor interest. And scoring away from the pitch, how African international football stars are making a difference back home. We begin with the developments in Egypt, where, with the military deadline for intervention ticking down, hundreds of thousands of protesters seeking the ouster of Egypt's President Mohamed Morsi sought on Tuesday to push the embattled leader further toward the edge, with another massive show of resolve and unity. In a significant move, opposition parties and the youth movement behind the demonstrations agreed that reform leader and Nobel Peace Laureate Mohamed El Baradei would represent them in any negotiations on the country's political future. Three government spokesmen quit on Tuesday as Egypt's powerful armed forces await the deadline on Wednesday afternoon for Morsi to find a political solution by Wednesday or face the roadmap that the generals have prepared to end the chaos. The military underlined it will not be a party in politics or rule, but it said it has a responsibility to find a solution because Egypt's national security is facing a grave danger. Well, we are bringing you live pictures now of Tahrir Square, where anti-Morsi protesters have gathered again for the fourth day running, asking President Mohamed Morsi to step down. Now, this is the anniversary of the election of Egypt's first ever civilian president. Now, President Mohamed Morsi there has said that he will not be stepping down, and this is pushing the embattled leader further toward the edge with another massive show of resolve and unity. Live pictures coming through to us now from Tahrir Square, where anti-Morsi protesters have gathered. Now, President Mohamed Morsi told Egyptians on Tuesday that he had been freely elected little more than a year ago and intended to continue to carry out his duties despite mass protests demanding his resignation. In a televised address to the nation, Morsi warned that the only alternative to respecting the constitutional legitimacy of his presidency was further bloodshed on the streets. He was speaking after 7 people were killed and dozens more injured in clashes in Cairo between his supporters and his opponents. CCTV's Adel Mahroui reports.
After 32 hours from the army's ultimatum, President Morsi spoke to the public, urging all Egyptians to avoid bloodshed or clashes with the army. But he insisted to continue in power, ignoring the deadline that will be forced upon him 16 hours later.
I am with you to the end to protect the legitimacy. With you I'll stay, and with you we change the reality to a new Egypt that we all love, stable and prosperous, despite those who are trying in vain to take it to a different road.
After the speech, clashes spread all over the country. At least 23 dead and hundreds others injured. Most of the casualties were at Cairo University between President Morsi's supporters and some who are believed to be thugs.
We will stay until we are victorious because we think we are right. We love our religion and we love nothing else. Legitimacy will win, and regardless to Morsi's mistake, he is the rightful president for the country. If the army insisted to take the opposition side, we will show them who we are.
Earlier in the day, a court verdict dismissed Morsi's appointed prosecutor general, who, according to the court, came to power against the law. The Prime Minister's chief of staff announced his resignation after Morsi's speech. Egypt's sports minister joined him to increase the number of resigned ministers to 10. The army, on the other hand, responded to the president's speech by setting the exact timing when the 48 hours will end. Some statements from the Brotherhood warned about the consequences that could rise if the army takes the streets. In few hours, the deadline will end, and the entire world is waiting to see what will happen next.
Officials' resignations are crashing over the government. The Prosecutor General's appointment was the last legal battle Morsi hadn't lost. Now that is gone. It seems that even if Morsi made it to the deadline, he would be almost standing alone. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Well, as Egypt's embattled President Mohamed Morsi insists he will not step down, prompting angry and defiant reactions from protesters around the country, France's Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius urged the Islamist leader to hear popular demands for the sake of Egypt's stability.
When there's such a mass of problems and such a mass of people expressing what is not just unease but censure and distress, then the Egyptian government must listen to the people. And this is my hope for them, because Egypt is a great country that needs stability.
He
didn't respect anyone who is here and in other squares. He came out with a speech to provoke us, not to calm us. He's threatening us, but I'm sending him a message from here. Egyptians will never be scared.
Well, tension is rising in Egypt as the 48-hour ultimatum issued by the army nears lapse. Well, those are live pictures now. We are bringing you from Tahrir Square, where anti-Morsi protesters have gathered. 3 government spokesmen have already quit as Egypt's powerful armed forces await the deadline on Wednesday afternoon for President Morsi to find a political solution by Wednesday or face the roadmap that the generals have prepared to end the chaos. Now, 5 ministers have already resigned, including Egypt's foreign minister. World leaders have maintained calm, have called for calm and have asked for reconciliation, and have said that Egypt's fragile stability is now under threat. Well, those are live pictures coming to you there from Tahrir Square, where anti-Morsi protesters continue to gather, calling for President Mohamed Morsi to step down. Let's get a further insight on our top story today, and we are joined by Ziad Akal in Cairo. Ziad is a senior researcher at the Middle East Center for Strategic Studies. Well, Ziad, President Mohamed Morsi has asked the military to withdraw its ultimatum, which lapses today. Is this likely to happen, though?
It's actually very unlikely to happen. The military is in a position where it actually owns most of the cards in the game, and the Muslim Brotherhood and Mohamed Morsi equally are pretty much out of political options. So the military seems to be the more powerful side in this equation, which is why it's very unlikely for it to actually give Mohamed Morsi the kind of concessions that he asked for.
Well, Ziad, with the political stalemate now appearing, though, to hold so far, do we have an idea what the military political roadmap will entail, what the military is calling a roadmap? What are the options?
Well, it is very likely for the military, first of all, to announce the resignation of Mohamed Morsi, probably on the account that he has failed in protecting Egyptian national security, and they will probably have a presidential council that officially represents Egypt, probably made of military men and perhaps national symbols of politicians that do not necessarily represent specific political currents. There will, of course, be a timeline. That timeline will tell when exactly does the parliamentary elections are going to be, when are presidential elections going to be, according to which laws, because I believe, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood's constitution will be suspended for as soon as the military takes office from Mohamed Morsi. This is the most likely scenario to happen. And the military has, one way or the other, given signs that it is pro a very similar kind of scenario for the future.
All right, Ziad Akal from the Middle East Center for Strategic Studies joining us there from Cairo on that developing story in Egypt. Many thanks indeed for your insights. Well, at 10 minutes past the hour, we'll take a short break here on Africa Live, but still ahead on the program. Decision time. Court expected to issue ruling in Mandela family graveside row. And he came, he saw, but did he conquer? We evaluate what President Obama's Africa tour really achieved. continue to keep our eye on the developments on Egypt, but let's head now to South Africa, where the grandson and heir of ailing former South African President Nelson Mandela is facing charges of grave tampering and is already embroiled in a civil court action over the gravesite brought by 16 other members of the Mandela family. Mandla Mandela removed the remains of 3 of Mandela's children. The ruling on the case is expected shortly, and CCTV's Renee Delcam has more.
As South Africans across the political spectrum continue praying for the critically ill former president, some of his family members are engaged in a legal battle over where the bones of his children should finally be laid to rest. Madiba's 3 deceased children, 2 sons and an infant daughter, who died between 1948 and 2005, had been buried in the Mandela family graveyard in Qunu, until Mandla Mandela had removed their remains from Qunu and reburied them in his village of Mvezo 2 years ago. People here in the Eastern Cape say the Mandela family feud over the burial site of the Mandela children should have been dealt with months ago. They say it's unfortunate that this sensitive family matter has to be dealt with now, at a time when the revered international icon lay critically ill in hospital.
We're not happy at all as the ANC. We believe that's a pure and a family internal matter that should have been handled within the family parameters. It should have not gone to where it is now. Courts of laws are not supposed to be used for issues like these ones. You need a family leadership to prevail on matters like this.
As family, they must quickly resolve each and everything which can actually enable the old man to find peace. Because it's important for the entire nation. It's important for us as well.
According to court papers, the 16 members of the Mandela family who are demanding that Mandla Mandela returns the remains of Madiba's children include Mandela's wife, Graça Machel, his daughters Makaziwe, Zenani and Zinzi, as well as several of his grandchildren. Renee Delcam, CCTV, Qunu.
Let's get more now on the cultural relevance of the burial sites and rites in South Africa. And we're joined live by Jonas Ndambule, the chief of Mthatha, the main town of the King Sabata Dalinyebo local municipality in Eastern Cape province of South Africa. He's joining us there live. Mr. Jonas, thank you very much for joining us here on Africa Live. Now, the Mandela family is currently embroiled in this court dispute over where his kin have been buried. Why is this important?
Yeah, it is quite true that the Mandela family was in court on yesterday, including Daba Mandela and 2 daughters of Dr. Nelson Mandela. It is because 2 years ago, Mandla Mandela did unlawfully remove the bones of the Mandela family and buried them to Mvezo without consulting the elders and even the ancestors. Because in our cultural system or in our traditional system of doing things, you cannot perform a ritual without first asking the elders, permission from the elders to go and exhume the bones of the dead ones. That is why we are here in court waiting for the outcome of the court.
Mr. Jonas, the court though has ordered the exhumation of the bodies that are the subject of the suit. What are the cultural considerations though guiding the exhumation process?
When you perform a ritual according to our African traditional leadership system, our system says before you do anything concerning traditional wedding, traditional ceremony, like exhumation of the bodies, you consult the elder ones by calling the fathers and the daughters of the same family, by consulting the local traditional leaders and tell them that you want to perform a ritual. And then before that ritual is being performed, you make a short prayer next to the scroll or next to the grave, consulting the ancestors to be on your side, to influence you, to give you the power about how are you going to do that ritual. And then Mandla Mandela failed to follow those guidelines. He just went and dig up the graves without consulting the elder ones. And that is contrary to our system as Africans.
All right, Mr. Jonas Ndambule, the chief of Mtata, the main town of King Sabata, the Linyebo local municipality in the Eastern Cape province. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama has returned to Washington from his 6-day visit to Africa. Despite claims the trip marks a turning point in U.S.-Africa relations, critics say the American president has left empty-handed. CCTV's Nina Maria Potts has more.
White House officials are dubbing President Obama's Africa trip a huge success, but some analysts here in Washington are saying he still hasn't managed to change the prevailing view that he's out of touch with modern-day Africa, and this trip was yet another sore reminder of his administration's long-term absence.
There is some positive that he visited Africa, but to change perceptions, it will take much longer. People will need to see the actions. So the visiting 3 countries and making a lot of speeches and pronouncements are good, but to change perceptions, you need more than that. We need to see action. We want to see better engagement with African and Americans. We haven't seen that. I mean, he visited and he said that will happen. That we have to wait and see.
Still, President Obama has promised new partnerships that move beyond aid, an upgraded and extended trade pact, and a multi-billion-dollar initiative to build power plants across the sub-Saharan region. But analysts are saying it's all too little and too late. The American president is still failing to make the most of Africa's economic opportunities.
He's trying to play catch-up with what China has been doing. So if you talk about comparisons, it's a bit still very little in terms of visits, in terms of resource commitments, substantive engagement. I think U.S. needs to do more.
President Obama returns to the U.S. amid calls for him to take a long, hard look at his Africa policies. White House officials say they're thrilled with the reception he got in Africa, but there's a growing consensus among experts here that he's still battling the perception that while he may care about Africa, he doesn't quite care enough. Nina Maria Potts, CCTV in Washington.